focus. Ideate, innovate, enable. PwC and CNBC TV18 present CEO Dialogues.
Medicines from India are exported to more than 200 countries, making India arguably one of the most important players in the global pharma landscape. India serves 50% of all the drugs in Africa, 40% of generic medicines in the US are from India, and India also accounts for 60% of the world's vaccine demand. In fact, 70% of the vaccines used by the World Health Organization are sourced from the country. The Indian pharmaceutical industry is currently worth $50 billion, and in just 6 years, it's projected to be $130 billion. The growth rate so far has been impressive, and it is expected to move at a faster pace. The private healthcare market is pegged at $48 billion as per PwC, and valuations in the sector have seen a significant expansion. India, though, still has a significant shortfall in infrastructure, with beds per 1,000 people well below markets like China. Amidst all of this, we do have winds of consolidation blowing through the domestic pharma and healthcare industry, with private equity playing a pivotal role in both. And when we talk about the diagnostic sector, it's also experienced significant shifts with a growing focus on home sample collection, preventive care, and an increasing preference for organized players driven by superior quality services and robust infrastructure. So what does all of this mean for India's pharma and healthcare sectors? Without further ado, I'm going to get Sujay to set the stage for the conversation that we're about to have. List out the mega trends for us. There's plenty that's going on in this space at this point in time. There's plenty of interest and enthusiasm. If you look at what's happening with the stock markets, that's certainly telling you a story about the Indian pharma sector. Sujay, take it away.
Shireen, we published a CEO survey a few months back at Davos, which 40% of CEOs said that given all the technological disruptions, AI and new technologies, they do not see their businesses surviving in 10 years, or if they do, it'll be radically transformed. So in the context of that, and in the context of the incredible successes of your industries, a few questions jump into mind. Trends. First, of course, in pharma, how do we consolidate our position with the US, where we have a pole position, but of course with IRA and price erosion and spend on specialty pharma, what does that mean? Second, in terms of innovation, how do we make innovation more affordable? How do we digitize at a much faster pace across the value chain? Similarly, on the health services side, the point that Shireen made about expanding capacity, how do we digitize in this very massive country to take it further and onwards? How do we make India a better clinical trial destination or one for medical tourism? And finally, last but not the least, with increased PE ownership of the health sector, what does it mean for patient and patient pricing? It's important to remember that it's not about the industry's next phase of growth, but this is a very critical industry. Every nation depends on education and health to power the next phase of growth. So if we were to receive the demographic dividend, it's but imperative that we reflect on these questions. And so really look forward to discussing and hearing perspectives on these trends from leaders here.
Umang Bora, I'm going to come to you. And let's get the elephant out of the room, so to speak. You're not just dealing with a company. You're dealing with an institution. You're dealing with an 85-year legacy. That is the legacy that Cipla enjoys. The question today is, the radical transformation that Sujay spoke of, are we likely to see that radical transformation mean that Cipla is no longer going to be the Cipla as we know it, and it is going to be sold?
Look, there's certainly a lot of news in the media about various transactions, interest. This is a significantly large sector for the country, and one to be proud of. I think the ethos of this sector is not going to change. I think care is still going to be deeply rooted in how India sees its role in the world. I can't specifically comment on any transaction in the public, but all I can say is that it's a fragmented industry, and one could expect that with the type of interest that's being shown, that there would be some amount of consolidation that could occur.
No, I understand, and I respect the fact that you cannot speak specifically about Cipla. But let's talk about some of the drivers that could potentially drive this consolidation. What will drive consolidation? What will be the drivers for any potential consolidation?
One of the biggest trends we're seeing that will drive consolidation in the segment is just this whole transition from illness to wellness. Right? So we've always seen healthcare as something that's tending to the sick. We're going to see healthcare as something that's tending to everyone. So in comes digital, in comes the connect, in comes diagnostics at home, in comes medicine at home. So that's one trend. we are the pharmacy capital of the world when it comes to chemical synthesis. I think the future of therapy and the way we see healthcare is actually going to be a lot more of biology. That's going to trigger a lot of reallocation of capital from chemistry perhaps to biology. The third is this is the world of data, right? A lot of us companies have a lot of data, but we don't use it well enough. And there are a lot of these other smaller companies where data is still not central to what we do. So a lot of this digitization, miniaturization of healthcare is probably going to happen. So I think those are fundamentally the drivers of consolidation. But the biggest one here is, I always ask this question to everyone, and who's going to pay for the innovation?
Yeah.
And so unless the affordable thesis of India expands significantly or insurance expands significantly, and by the way, that's going to be a pressure point to consolidate as well. Because if there are less number of people who are going to pay for innovation, then the number of people who are bringing innovation has to consolidate.
Let me bring Rahul into the conversation. Where does the capital come in to drive the kind of innovation that we want, the kind of innovation that everyone here is excited about and is hoping for?
We are called pharmacy of the world. But what is next? I think next is something which is more innovative technologies. And to develop these innovative technology, we need capital and we need funding. And I think now the different companies, visionaries, along with the government, like private people as well as government, they are putting some funds. Of course, these are some available funds, but a lot more is needed. So I think we should invest more in innovative technology. I think that's the future.
And do you believe that private equity is going to play a big role as far as this innovation capital is concerned?
PE only jumps when there's something substantial and there's a good return on investment, right? So I think they will come into it. I think right now government support as well as like private fundings, big pharma, I think they will play the crucial role.
Sanjeev, again, speaking of the opportunities, the journey that we've covered, but more importantly, the breakthroughs that we need to make and the challenges that you foresee today in being able to realize some of the goals and the opportunities that we just spoke of.
The whole cycle that we need to change from chemistry to biology is very important. What we might do require is a few success stories to ensure that the global market also looks at India from the biology space. And we are starting to see some of that happening. The second very important aspect is that we have to realize, and Umang actually mentioned the illness to wellness form, but preventive on one hand and cure and remission on the other hand is getting more important than managing the disease. And if that is happening, then we will have to, technology-wise, end up at both the ends, data end and the end of high science. And more scientists we train in high science is going to help us. The third point is that the window is small. What we keep on thinking, the chemistry window lasted 50 years. But the biologics window is not going to last that much. Otherwise, you will be an also-ran, another manufacturer trying to compete on price. If you want to compete on innovation, then the window is next 10, 15 years. So we need to quickly move there. So that's the third important thing. And the fourth important thing is companies will have to transform themselves to realize that their business of yesterday will continue, but that business is not going to take them any far. Otherwise, you will see the top 10 company ranking changing very fast.
Meenakshi, let me get you in on the conversation. As you hear what we are hearing from Umang, from Sanjeev, and from Sujay, and if you were to take a look at the India opportunity and to Sanjeev's point about the window of opportunity being another 10 to 15 years, what do you believe we need to emphasize? What do you believe we need to prioritize today?
A lot has changed in the positive direction. I want to talk first about how quickly we are able to now bring drugs into the country, make new launches. The regulatory process to bring drugs into the country is getting much more, transparent and systematized in a sense. So whether it's the requirement for data, that's now very clear. Yes, we require clinical trials in the country, but that's made clear upfront. Whether it's the whole subject expert committee, what are they going to look at when we submit dossiers? And the CDSCO is also looking at electronic submissions. We submit reams of data when it comes to one product, but that's all going electronic. So a lot is happening to streamline and make transparent how quickly we can bring products in the country. The second is the clinical trial infrastructure, and I think Sujay talked about it. It used to be perceived that, global companies want to come into India because it's,
But they can't.
But they can't, but actually now we can. I mean, for us as Pfizer, more than 25-30% of our trials are now in India. we are now starting to get India participation into global studies. So exactly the same protocols, but we have Indian patients. And that does three things. A, Indian patients get access to the product very quickly. B, Indian doctors get experience of the product. And then we've got data for Indian patients in India on how the drug works. So it makes it much more, it gives everyone much more confidence to use the product. So I think it's on so many fronts, whether it's approvals, whether it's clinical trials, whether it's sourcing, India is now totally on the map for every function in Pfizer, and I'm sure that's true for all multinationals.
PwC and CNBC TV18 present CEO Dialogues. PwC and CNBC TV18 present CEO Dialogues.
Ramira, let's talk about what's happening as far as the diagnostics market is concerned. And through COVID, we saw the market open up and boom significantly. Of course, there has been a normalization that's taken place post that. But what are the mega trends that you see that will shape the future of the diagnostics business in India?
I think one of the reasons why people want to now take better care of themselves preventatively is also because in the illness space, healthcare has been slightly broken. Right? If you look at pharma, you look at hospitals, you look at diagnostics or any of the other stakeholders, the patient who's at the core, we're not always taking care of the patient, looking at their DNA, looking at everything, right? You take a drug regardless of your DNA. You go to a hospital, you're not always having genetic testing. I think the way healthcare will change in the future is everything is going to become very personalized, right? So based on your makeup, based on your DNA, your drugs are going to be personalized, your treatment is going to be personalized, and therefore the whole treatment pattern, the curative part for a patient will become better. And I think diagnostics is going to play a very significant role in this future of healthcare, because unless we can accurately tell you your DNA, how is anybody else going to do their job?
So
right?
on that point, whether it's digitization or the better use of data, when you talk about personalization, I mean, where are we on that curve today? And where could the inflection point be in actually being able to deliver personalized services?
We're very, very, very early in the stage. But I would certainly say that, 10 years later, 15 years later, I think and I hope healthcare will look far more integrated for the patient, where data is integrated, care is integrated, people are talking to each other, and it's not all these little pieces. The second thing I think which is going to be very critical, your question around diagnostics, we've seen ridiculous amounts of noise in this industry in the last few years, right? We've seen every day news articles about this one entering, that one entering, and it almost became a
Tests
joke.
for free virtually.
I mean, it became a joke, right? Where as if we were talking about something which is not healthcare. I mean, fundamentally, what are we doing in diagnostics? You're taking your best quality doctors, your best equipments, your best processes, and you're giving somebody a picture of what's happening in their body. If that's not correct, your treatment is going to go wrong. So consumerization is great from a perspective of make life easier for patients, make it more convenient, but you can't skip over the substance. The main reason behind this is because there's a complete lack of regulatory environment for diagnostics. We have 300,000 labs in India, of which 99.99% are not accredited, right? So that means any individual walking in today to a lab, you may get a report, you don't know what you're seeing. It's a really scary situation.
Let me get Dr. Tarang into the conversation. To the point that Amira was making about while you want personalization, you don't want commoditization of patient care. As a healthcare service provider today, how are you looking at the changes that are taking place, and how are you shaping your strategy, your policies in line with that?
The biggest success story of healthcare is COVID in India. The way India tackled COVID with all the pharma industry, diagnostics and hospitals coming to make it not only accessible but also using the best of the technology to make it as technologically advanced as it could be. We had our vaccines being sent across the world to various other countries. We had our hospitals whereby we actually did healthcare to rural India, which is only accessing today 25% of the modern healthcare compared to what the rest of us see in the cities. At our hospital, we have technology in more than 50 high-end equipments where we capture the patient's data so that the modality of treatment given to him is personalized to him. One of the thing is that you use technology to make the healthcare accessible, personalized and predictive also.
Yes.
So you should be able to predict what the patient needs tomorrow in order to ensure that it's preventive and it's not always curative, and you don't land up to see high stroke rates, high MI rates in the hospital.
Gautam and Raj, let me come to you now and to take that conversation forward as well, and really to also address the point that Sujay made, which I think is an important one, and I don't believe that that's an issue that has in fact been debated at all. While there's a lot of enthusiasm about private equity getting into the hospital sector, but what does it actually mean as far as patient care is concerned? Are we going to see patient care, the costs of that go up significantly? Because at the end of the day, private equity wants return on capital, and that's just how they operate. So what is it going to mean, not just for the sector, but also for the patient? Gautam.
Essentially what is happening is we are moving to a wellness care. The care which we are providing in the hospital today is probably going to move out of the hospital, and we have seen this going out for care at home services. Also, we may not realize that India has a large elderly population and it's going to grow. So after a few years, those people will need some kind of a care at home. There will be other services outside the hospital. What you need in a country like India, and Tarang I think mentioned that, is the access to the tier 2, tier 3. So the Niti Aayog said that around 1/3 people have more than 50% of healthcare in the country. So to provide access, what we need is the ability to pay, not affordability. So what we are talking about as the insurance at the top end, many private sectors are there. We have Ayushman at the lower end. What we need is a middle class insurance Ayushman type of a scheme that will take care of the affordability. And then we come to private equity. The access to India will come because of private equity driving, because healthcare is a very capital intensive business. If you are getting capital which is helping you drive, I think private equity has a good role to play. However, I just need to caution, healthcare cannot be devoid of good clinical outcomes. So if you are saying that I am getting private equity only to scale up and make money, it will not work unless backed by good clinical outcomes. So it's a little long answer to your short question.
But that's it's an important answer, and I think that you bring out some of the significant nuances that we do need to focus on. Raj, let me get you to weigh in on that as well, and then I'll get Sanjeev to talk about what the bull case for private equity is. Raj, go ahead.
I think it's a great thing that private equity is interested in healthcare delivery. If you look at 2 prior years of COVID, on an average, there were deals worth of $750 million in India. 22, it was $2.5 billion. This year, we are already more than $4 billion. For them, it's a high growth, resilient, sector with steady revenue streams. While their demand supply gap is huge, it's only going to go up with aging population, all demographic factors like education, income levels, insurance penetration going up. So it's a great sector to be in. In return, they help us grow, scale up. They demand corporate governance, capital allocation discipline, and in return they get good returns. So I think it's a win-win. I think it's a great thing that we are attracting private equity.
Given the fact that you do have access to this capital today, how are you gearing up for the future?
I think molecular diagnostic is helping us to now diagnose cancer at a genetic level, at a cellular level. We have more than 200 types of cancers. With molecular diagnostic, we may have hundreds more, right? And that's what is going to lead us to more personalized, precise treatment. And everyone talks about affordability. They talk about price point. What this is going to help us to do is give only that accurate treatment which makes an impact and a safer outcome for patients. So we are investing a lot in genomics, molecular diagnostic. We have invested a lot more in digital pathology. We feel that, for our sector, cancer, that's going to lead us and give us a competitive advantage. And the last piece is data. Now with, all the digital modalities that we have and the data we have, machine learning, AI, hopefully, once we get our data, clinical data with diagnostic data put together, structured, hopefully it will give us more insights to make our treatment pathways more impactful and safer for patients.
But Sanjeev, let's talk about the India opportunity and the India bull case, because that's clearly what's drawing in the foreign capital at this point in time. And also the implications of large-scale consolidation, should we continue to see that happen?
If you look at the last 4 or 5 years, there has not been a huge amount of private equity investments into the sector because it is capital intensive. There is going to be, you have seen a lot of investment in, let's say, online pharmacies, for instance, because there isn't huge amount. It's about because they're leveraging technology, and I think that's something which is going to continue. Possibly see a lot more investments in areas like diagnostics, etc. The other one which will drive a lot of private equity investments, foreign capital, really is going to be the consolidation space itself. If you leave the top 5 or 6 chains out, most of the hospitals are like 20 beds, 25 beds, etc., etc. Now, somebody could say that, no, I'm going to do a roll-up, and I'm going to create a hospital which is 100, 200 beds, etc., and I'm going to have multiple of those. Scale is very, very important for a private equity, right? I mean, they won't get any value by running a 20-bed hospital. 20-bed hospital makes no sense for them. So I think scale is very important. So if there is consolidation, if there is a platform that can be created to drive consolidation, and then they could be investing in it, that will be very interesting for them, I would think. I think I completely agree with the point that unlikely that private equity will be putting in large amount of dollars in research. But I would say that that's where the responsibility comes for some of the large families and private wealth in the country at this point in time. When we talk about R&D, when we talk about the fact that Indian educational institutions are bereft of the financial heft which creates research and development heft, which the US, for instance, has. I think the same thing applies for pharma in a very big way. And I think that's where the responsibility of India Inc. is there to be investing in R&D. I mean, the government has said 5,000 crores. That 5,000 crores is nothing, really, honestly, from an R&D standpoint. And that is where I think the responsibility for us is there, because sustained growth will only come, and everybody has been talking about R&D innovation, but that has to come. I think a large part of that will have to come from India. I think the other piece I would say is the broad focus on sustainability. And I think that's something, but particularly for this sector, is very, very critical. I mean, if you look at it, if healthcare were to be a country, I think they'll be the 4th largest polluting country in the world. I mean, if you look at it, API is one of the most polluting industries. Likewise, for formulations, healthcare certainly is, with the need for water and so on and so forth. And I think that's one big area. Now, typically, when you think about getting private capital, can they solve for that need of the sector? That could be another opportunity, for instance. So I think one has to also look for niches and solve the problems that the sector at this point in time has. Could be research, could be scalability, could be consolidation, could be sustainability. And one of the things which I must also add is that I do feel that when we talk about digital transformation at large, possibly this sector has a way to go. And I think that's another opportunity for certain.
Well, I think we've clearly drawn up a prescription for change and hopefully a prescription for growth for India's healthcare sector, one that does have to ensure that it is accessible, it is inclusive, and it is equitable. We cannot have a prescription that leaves a large majority of India out of its reach. The focus needs to be on R&D, the focus needs to be on innovation, the focus needs to be on quality, the focus also needs to be on finding competitive strengths at this point in time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of the PwC CNBC TV18 CEO Dialogue. We are going to take a break and return with more conversation, but from all of us here for the moment, many thanks for watching.
PwC and CNBC TV18 present CEO Dialogues. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.